everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And today we're going to give you a commentary for a lot of Spawn Year. What you're going to be seeing while we're talking is the presentation that we did for our red carpet premiere here at Geekvolution headquarters. We had a bunch of friends and family over to see the finale about a week and a half before it aired. And in fact, Vince, I didn't even have all the episodes finished.
Yeah, he said that, and a lot of people kind of went, "Really?"
Yeah, I've told folks, but yeah, I had to work on the scripting for all this stuff months and months earlier because we needed snow, and there's a lot of stuff that was really time sensitive. So it was weird because I wouldn't usually advocate writing like this, but I actually had to write like the last quarter of Spawn Year already having the ending completely written. But anyway, so I spent a lot of the last 2 or 3 weeks before the party working on this presentation and getting, I mean, this prologue was done 2 years ago, so I didn't really have to touch that up too much. But doing all the finale stuff. So anyway, what you're going to see here is what I consider to be the essential stuff to appreciate the ending of Spawn Year and the story overall. Of course, you'd appreciate it, you'd get it a lot more if you saw some of the reviews, because a lot of what we did story-wise was inspired by the comics and my experience with the comics and that kind of stuff. So, but I do think that this works almost as its own movie. It's missing stuff, but almost. And so this is the prologue, the first episode. There's a recap, and then the 3-part finale.
Is there a Captain Logan?
No, that would be the clone of Captain Logan that Dan would make, but Dan hopefully stopped cloning people. Anyway, Vince and I
do have a question for you. I'm kind of interested to know how it was to get Jason to act in these early shoots.
Yeah, because he was 2 here.
Yeah. Jason
was great. He had his 2 lines. They were 1 word apiece. He knew exactly what to say, and he ad-libbed that whole 2-0-ith thing, and we got him to do it every take.
That's cool.
We obviously shot that from 3 different angles. That's how we generally shoot this stuff. We'll shoot as much of a scene as we can from one angle, and then we'll go to the other angle, and then sometimes there's a third, and then we'll piece together the best takes.
I love this upcoming complete disregard for Spawn comics and Mountain Dew.
Every time Vince sees this, he just loses it when I drop like that. What I was going to say is Vince and I today are going to take this completely out of the metafiction and talk about the production of this as it really was. So, as far as anyone knows, Vince is a real person and Dooms Vince is a fictional character.
Well, real-ish, I suppose.
Anyway, so Vince, oh, you know what? Real quick. Real quick about Jason, he read those scripts for the script for that prologue for months after this. Yeah. He carried it around. He looked at it, he loved it, and he would repeat back mine and your lines, and yeah, it was fun.
You know, I seem to recall that because he wanted to read it to me one day, and I said, "Oh, really?
You're dead.
All right, bub.
And I'm God."
I am God. It's true.
And even at 2, Jason was already reading pretty well, so he would read that stuff and regurgitate it back to people. It was kind of fun. So Vince, when you first took a look at the script for this stuff and the kind of stuff that you had to say, what did you think of it?
I kind of thought that Dooms Vince would object to me being him. No, I'm kidding. I enjoyed it. I felt like it was kind of a fun project for you and I to work on. And what I really liked about working with you on this was that you got like really interesting, or you got really good at Dooms Vince dialogue. And I mean, largely the Dooms Vince stuff we do is improvised. You know, whatever comes to mind is whatever I say. But you allowed me to play with it a little bit, and to some extent, it was the dialogue that I just played with by itself. I didn't have to change the words. I just kind of delivered it different ways, and that was kind of the fun part about this. And what I find kind of interesting is that you sit there on the other end of this pointy stick and have to deal with somebody who is very melodramatic, and even in a minute's going to say, "Do not deny me my melodrama." So, how did you deal with me getting in your face about stuff?
Well, it was hilarious, and frankly, you and I have always, I mean, you and I have known each other for a long time. We've been friends for a long time. So, I don't, with you, I don't worry so much about personal space and stuff. It doesn't bother me. You know what I mean? Like you and I are just like so close and so friendly that that kind of thing didn't bother me. But there were a couple points where you got that stick so close to my face that I was like, I better not move forward at all, or I'm going to totally impale my forehead on this stick.
You don't need your face. It's a popular misconception.
No, you did a lot of really fun stuff with that prop.
I only took away every
You give me a prop, I'm just going to play with it.
Oh, so
yeah.
Even in my dreams, your villain
I kind of love that we took down all of the stuff behind, but on the other side.
But we left all that up. Yeah, I don't know why we did it like that. Yeah, we should not. We should have taken that stuff down. I guess we were being a little bit lazy.
In my head, what really happens here is that everything behind the desk is your own personal. Everything behind the desk is your purgatory. Everything on the outside.
Well, and you know what's hysterical? The room right behind there is where the set is.
That's a good point.
So the
nobody knows that.
So well, they do now.
They do now.
So the actual hell, the literal hell that I'm gonna go in is actually right behind me, literally in real life. But yeah, Vince, you did some great stuff for this dialogue. I had a ton of fun writing Dooms, Vince, and you kind of trying to, I don't know, get a little bit in your head and kind of figure out, what does Dooms Vince say? Because you kind of created this character from scratch, and it kind of developed a life of its own. And after a while, I got to where I kind of felt like if we hadn't done Cooking with Dooms Vince, this stuff wouldn't have worked, because he has such a voice and a vernacular in that I found it not really that difficult at all to go, okay, this is what Dooms Vince would say and this is what he wouldn't say, and also this stuff was easy to write because at the time it wasn't a setup for a giant huge overarching story the way it turned out. I mean, it was a lot more skitty and sketchy, and I'm glad that I managed to come up with some stuff that actually I was able to build on later, because originally it wasn't supposed to really be what it turned into.
Now, but when Cap had this idea, he told me about a couple of things where he would say stuff like, I'm going to do an entire Spawn year. It's going to be one video every day about Spawn. And I said, well, bud, are you sure you can handle doing one video every day on something for a year? And he said, yeah, it'll just be like a comic vault every day, no problem. And then I said, well, Cap, knowing you, bud, you do have this ability to make things a bigger project than what they were originally supposed to be.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, there is a prologue, an epilogue, a finale. If you look really hard, there's a kitchen sink and your face in there. You gotta look hard, though. Actually, you don't have to look hard for the kitchen sink.
Nope, that's in there.
That's in there
when I'm in green face.
That's green face when you're the Grinch.
Yeah, it got nuts. After a while, I started looking at this like a novel. It was hard not to start plotting and doing character stuff, because
you have to.
Yeah, but even before I realized how bad the comics were going to get, and that there wasn't going to be enough substance there to bring people back. Because I've heard from a lot of people that have said, I got to where I didn't care about the reviews, I didn't care about the reviews anymore, I cared about the story. Even before that, I just kept finding things that would be kind of fun to play in this world of Dooms Vince and his that look is brilliant, by the way. These machinations of torturing Captain Logan with these with these comics. So even episode 5, I'm doing the popsicle stuff and all of that, but none of that was supposed to be really character driving. It was just kind of here's a fun backdrop to play in, so you get other fun things in a video, kind of like AVGN will every time.
Still funny to me.
Kind of like AVGN will have kind of some non sequitur stuff happen in some of his videos where it's not really a story. It's just random things that happen, but it's kind of funny and it kind of it sort of adds something to it. This I wanted to be more than that, where it's a framework. The reviews are actually a part of the story, but it was still going to be kind of skit-like, just a really long one.
Now, when you get to the point that you start doing some more non sequitur stuff, it's after you've killed Doom's Vince, and maybe we should bring this up then, but I'm going to ask it now. Anyway,
it's never really non sequitur. It's just,
I mean, you start doing like some like weird things, like tiny Adam West and stuff like that don't seem to necessarily be generated from things that happened previously. So, were you starting to watch more AVGN around that point?
Actually, when I first started getting into AVGN, it was right as I was starting to make this. It was really this early stuff. Yeah. Not as much. I mean, like, that's not when I discovered it. You know what I mean?
You know, I'm gonna give you a compliment, and maybe you can talk about it a little bit here. But one of the things that I like about this series is that the reviews are reviews, and the story is the story. The story is kind of generated by the reviews, but the reviews are not done dramatized to drive the story. You make the review based on what it is, and I mean maybe this exists, or maybe the way you made the review has some kind of like psychological. I'm having to read a lot of Spawn that's terrible.
Well, and I'll sometimes I'll make parallels in things where, like, in the entry, this fictional version of Captain Logan is like, this is happening to this comic, and weirdly this is also like happening to me right now, or I can relate to this character because of what's happening to me here. So every review I'm always writing from the fictional perspective. What is my character's mindset, not what is my mindset. And so they are integrated and interwoven, but like, you're right that the reviews are the reviews in the sense of I do always give you a straight up review. I don't like there were points where I considered, like, when Captain Logan kind of seems to sort of be degenerating into madness, just have a review that's kind of him just gurgling and like not much else. I never wanted to do that. I decided that. And it got a little bit hard to balance it, where it was like, once I start like talking to action figures and thinking I'm going insane, what does that do to the reviews? And I think that the fictional Captain Logan does get a little bit more like cynical and negative on the stuff at that point, but there's still critical analysis, like that's still there. I think that the fiction, doing it from the guy as the fictional character, I think makes it different than the way I would probably do it, just normally. But everything I say that I think about a book is what I actually thought, just from this lens.
I mean, maybe you're a little snarkier at times, or maybe you chose different words than you would normally choose. But at the core, if you liked it, you gave it credit, and if you didn't, you gave it credit for that. But.
Precisely, yeah. Well, and also, like, just having to read all of this, and a lot of it being really not good, and reading it all in such a short amount of time, relatively, and having to. I mean, most of these reviews are somewhere between 4 and 7 minutes. I mean, like, that's pretty expounded. I'm kind of expounding upon stuff and getting into the nitty-gritty. So, like, that obviously affected the way I looked at this stuff. I honestly, I probably dislike a lot of the stuff that doesn't work even more because I have to think about it so much. But that would have been the same even if I had just been straight up writing this. Originally, Spawn Year was supposed to just be off-the-cuff vaults. And it turned into this partly because I came up with the silly notion of a Mountain Dew sugar coma and loved it and wanted to do it. Especially when I realized, oh wow, Mountain Dew is green. And cycloplasm is green, or necroplasm is green. So like I came up with the Mountain Dew thing before I came up with. Before I even realized. Oh yeah, it's all green. That's why eventually it had to become my blood. But Vince, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. But regarding the business about Tiny Adam West and all of that stuff, that was a matter of a new status quo more than it was a matter of let's come up with like really, really weird, detached stuff. The idea was supposed to be that Doom's Vince has not managed to get Captain Logan to quit with his visage and everything he's been trying to do, so he changes tactics, and he's had that Mountain Dew there the whole time as another possible, like, contingency to go a different direction. So if at any point fictional Captain Logan had drank that Mountain Dew, he would have wound up in the second sugar coma. If he had drank, he gets that on day 60. If he had drank that on day 61, we would have seen Tiny Adam West in like 67, 68.
Fair enough.
That was always the idea. So the idea is that it's a program, and the program does a lot of different. It has a lot of these different possible plans and contingencies to try to get Captain Logan to quit, but of his own accord. That was always kind of the idea. So now we're looking. I talked all the way through all that stuff. We haven't even talked much production and stuff.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about like some of the sets and some of the things. I mean, you essentially have this you have this little room back here that you have shoved yourself and all of your Spawn stuff into.
Yeah.
And it's what's really weird is that he'll get me onto that set and he'll have me do stuff, and especially when there's the two of us in there.
Oh man,
and
it's no space.
It's like a cluster hoo-ha where Cap's about 2/3 my size, or maybe even 1/3 my size, or like 1/3. Wow, one half.
Yeah.
But
I'm not a gremlin or anything.
So,
don't feed me after midnight. You'll get spawned here.
So Cap and I try to get on that set, and there's so little space for a guy my size to maneuver that it was.
I mean, let's not pretend like it's a massive space for me.
Yeah, I mean, he has enough room for him.
Pretty much for the right. Well, and the thing is, you may notice this in some special feature stuff or whatever, but we didn't even build the black stuff in the first set all the way to the ceiling. It was meant to sit in. Mm-hmm. So it only goes up about 4 feet.
And yet, when we rebuilt the set, we still nailed it to the ceiling.
We did, but that was in a different room.
I'm taller than you.
Yeah, that's part of it too. But I mean, the set itself, it's only about 5-6 feet wide, and it's only about 4 feet tall. So I mean, we're in a box basically. But
you made yourself a black box.
Yeah, I mean, it worked for our purposes here. By the way, this here is actually a closet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the open grave is a closet. What you're looking at right now is the recap, and this recap is a little different from the one that's posted online right now. I made this for the red carpet premiere for folks that hadn't seen all of Spawn years, so I actually put stuff at the end of this about the death of Captain Cog, the death of Freakadoo, the Coke Angel, all that stuff is at the end of this. So anyway, if you're wondering what in the world are we watching right now, this is the recap that kind of gets you from the prologue all the way up and tells you the important stuff so that you can see the finale. And let's talk a little bit about the floating Doomsman's head. Vince is one of the most expressive people I know, and he can do like. He's got like 60 different Doomsman's faces. I mean, every time he does a face, it's different. And what we did when we first started, the first stuff we shot, I don't remember if we shot this actually before we shot any of the prologue. I think we did. I think the first thing we shot, Vince, was some of your the first session of I Am Doom's Vince and This Is Day Whatever of Spawn Year. And those were really expressive and funny, and Vince was like, really? I gotta do 365 of these? And he got a break, he got a reprieve when we got to 198 and we decided to kill him off, and then he didn't have to do that anymore.
I think we shot like just a little, like maybe 225.
We shot over, yeah, you're right, we shot over it. And of course, I still have all that footage, that's funny.
And Cap said, Vince, I'm sorry we didn't end up using those. I'm like, whatever, we didn't finish.
So, what we shot after the prologue was a bunch of footage of just Vince's head on black. I just did a close-up on his head. I put black behind him. And I ran the fog machine initially, and then realized that because we were going to use a mass generator anyway, we didn't need it. So I quit running the fog after that, which Vince kind of appreciated.
Yeah, I have allergies, so...
I got used to the fog machine myself after a while. But anyway...
They should always put Spawn things on ice.
Yeah. So anyway, we shot Vince, Vince's head, and he just did all these crazy expressions. And it's sort of like the way they shot Zordon in the original Power Rangers, where they did all of his stuff in one day. We did a lot of Dooms Vince's face in a couple of days, and all the way through Spawn Year, when you see Dooms Vince's head show up and like he's taunting Captain Logan and stuff, it's Vince in like 3 or 4 sessions of head stuff, and there were a couple points where I said, "Hey Vince, let's get a little bit more of it," but a lot of it's that first couple days.
Which, I mean, let's be realistic here. Is that I appreciate the compliment that I'm
We
over here
did.
doing.
Sorry, let me say this real quick too. For the board game, we did shoot a whole special session just for that, because there were a bunch of expressions I needed you to do specifically.
Yeah.
Where it was like I'm reacting. It's like Dooms Vince is reacting to how much he hates the game, and Dooms Vince is reacting to like Captain Logan like beating him in a play or something, and so we had to shoot all that extra.
The kudos to you for finding different ways to use that footage.
Oh, thanks.
Because, I mean, I did my best to do as much varied crap for as long as I could. And there are times that you would show me stuff, and I go, I'm in this episode. And you're like, yeah, I just used this thing. Remember all that stuff we shot that one day and that other day? I went, oh, yeah, look at that.
Before we started shooting the finale, Vince shot stuff for Spawn Year a total of maybe 6 days.
Yeah, we did.
And when we say days, we mean like an hour or less, with the exception of the prologue. But the prologue didn't take that long to shoot. I mean, like, you knew your lines pretty well. The epilogue, you and I both had some line reading things where like there's so much dialogue.
Yeah,
that
it got a little difficult.
Some of that took a lot longer, but the prologue. Can we talk real quick? It's just we're seeing all this stuff running through, and there's a million things I want to talk about. This speech. I was really happy with how that whole thing turned out, and that ended up being like kind of one of the most important things that gets said in Spawn Year. When you. And I just loved your delivery with it. And part of the reason I kept coming back to it and it became so much of the crux is because I just loved how that turned out so well. I mean, I just loved how well that turned out. When you say,
it'll always be possible.
It'll always be possible, yeah.
I think that there was a lot of stuff to work with in that speech. And we did a few read-throughs, and we really kind of looked down or ran down rather the varying ways we could do it. And which, for those of you who are wondering, by the way, it is true. I am now a physical therapist assistant, so I was pursuing a degree in physical therapy.
I used a lot of real stuff to inform all of this, so there's a grain of truth to everything, you know.
Hence the metafiction.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like there's honestly, I don't mind saying that I made myself a little bit vulnerable with Spawn Year because there is a little bit of truth to. I think I work a little too hard and too much sometimes, and I don't, and sometimes I have a difficult time prioritizing and all of that stuff. A little bit less truth in the Dooms Vince stuff.
That's fair, considering he's not a real person.
Well, but also like even if you were to look at that and be like, okay, how much of Vince is in Dooms Vince and how Captain Logan looks at him and that kind of, if you really wanted to read into it, and I don't want to analyze my own work, but just in case you're wondering, Vince is not an opera buff, and likes geek things. But even still, once again, I'm making myself kind of transparent when I say this, but like there's even a little bit of truth there. Of I see myself as sometimes like a little bit micromanaging, a little bit controlling. It's one of my character flaws, and so to create this character, I went to things that I'm not sure about or don't like about myself and kind of exaggerated them and brought them way to the forefront. I got to kind of explore my own feelings about who I am doing Spawn Year. That sounds weird, but that's what I.
That's interesting. It's like self-therapy,
or something. I don't know. But I mean, like, so I don't want people to, after I've said that, think, oh man, Captain Logan like feels like really guilty all the time. About like and the stuff about like not spending enough time with my family and all of that is completely fabricated. Yeah. That's more of a me feeling that way sometimes about myself, like, oh man, I feel like I work too hard. But my wife is always encouraging me. Yeah. You know, like she is. And I tried not to throw her under the bus in the prologue. I didn't want her to come off as a nag.
I don't think she did.
And I don't think she does. But Sarah has actually we've never had that experience where she's like, "Hey, you're working too much. You need to come up here and hang out with your family."
I mean, you do include your hair is hilarious. You do include your family.
I've gotten
in
a lot of
stuff.
comments about the hair. My hair is actually a little longer than that right now. I can do that right now.
Yeah, that's hilarious. You should do that for Halloween. Be a mad captain.
A mad captain, yeah. That was the genesis of Freakadoo.
You played with your hair and looked like, hey, I can do that.
Well, what happens there? The whole idea in that, if you haven't seen that episode, Vince, is like I have this kind of dream sequence where I'm at the end of Spawn Year and I've completely lost my mind over these comics and over thinking these figures are talking to me and stuff like that, and killing Dooms Vince and all of that, or was that? Yeah, I think that was right after the death of Dooms Vince, 198.
Yeah, because you drink it and you wake up as Spawn, Captain Spawn.
And so then later on when we see Freakadoo, the whole idea of Freakadoo was he is basically what Captain Logan would turn into, allegedly, if you went all the way through Spawn Year. And of course, all that stuff is just Spawn Year trying to screw with my mind and get me to quit. So none of it is true. None of it is true. But that was always the idea, and that's where the Pop-Tart thing came from too. And so when I'm doing the I write this fake entry, and I'm just making up lots of random things, and at some point I just go Pop-Tarts, and I had some comments about it, and I thought it was really funny, so I kind of brought it back and stuff, and that's why, in case you didn't catch it, that's why there are Pop-Tarts in Day 365. That's why we're all eating Pop-Tarts, and I try to do a lot of callbacks to things at the end.
They're gonna make Pop-Tarts.
As I said, I don't like those. I don't like commentaries that try to tell you what the story is about. But I'm trying to just kind of tell you what I was thinking about when I was writing stuff, but also point out a few things that you might have missed with some of the Easter eggs and things. I hope people don't mind me doing that, but I'm going to mention a few things in case you missed it.
Let's talk a little bit about the collaborative part of this.
Yeah.
Where, just to put your mind at ease, you are a little micromanaging. I'm kidding. Anyway. I mean, you are a little micromanaging, but that's the thing, is that it's not like you're demanding. And I do think there's a difference. I do think there's a distinction.
Well, I try not to be. I'm so used to working on my own is the thing.
Which, I mean,
I don't have to collaborate. I mean, I collaborate a lot with people in videos where, we have a conversation and stuff, but that's a lot different than here's a project that I'm, overseeing.
I mean, and the reason I say that there is a distinction, I mean, he recognizes something about himself. I hope I'm not being a jerk right now. But,
no, you're fine, go ahead.
He would always feel just a little guilty when he would ask me to do something else as Dooms Vince, or when he would ask somebody to make something for Spawn Year. And, I mean, that's the thing, though, is a lot of us, we would, give our time to this project and say, look, man, I mean, this is important to you. This is a thing you've been doing for 2 years now. I mean, by the end of it anyway. And say, here's a costume piece or a prop that Pierce would make, and Cap would say, I made some more dialogue for you, Vince. I'm sorry. I'm like, no, that's all right, dude. I'm like, whatever. I'm going to come over Wednesday anyway. We're going to shoot anyway, so we're just going to go ahead and do it. Now, the collaborative part of this, you ended up having to work with a lot of people, which isn't a problem for you. But this is something that you spend so much of your time doing solitarily, if that's a word.
Yeah, it's not that I'm not good at collaborating and I don't know how to work with people. It's a matter of this didn't start as a thing that was supposed to be this giant project that included all these different. I didn't want Spawn Year to encroach on other people's time because it just felt weird, because that's not what it was in the first place. And also, some of that stuff later on was well after we were supposed to be finished with it already. And so I just kept feeling like this is supposed to be over, and I keep roping people into it. And when Spawn Year started, I told Sarah, I'm going to do my level best to not turn this into a big thing that takes over everything. And it totally did that, and I blame Pierce. Because Pierce created the Spawn suit, and the Spawn suit was never intended to be in here. By the way, let me reel this back for a second and say, by the way, that's the thing I like doing a lot with that mask, taking my hands and just putting it down my face because I thought it looked cool. But
Spawn himself is a little melodramatic, so
yeah. So anyway, but let me reel this back a minute and say that, as I said earlier, I need to make sure to fix that before I post 365. Anyway, but because that's not posted yet at the time of this recording. Anyway, what was I gonna say? So originally, the whole concept of Spawn Year was Captain Logan falls in a Mountain Dew sugar coma. It's actually a coma. It's not the real Dooms Vince. It's all kind of a dream sequence. And when he wakes up at the end, Vince tells him, hey, how do you know that all the books you read were really the way they are in real life? Because you've never read them all before. And Captain Logan's like, oh, you're right. He's like, I think you're gonna have to read them again. And that's how it ends. And there are a lot of reasons that it turned into something bigger than that. As I said earlier, one of them is just, I got really into this fictional version of me character and wanted to turn it into a real story, partly because what I was reading was not good at storytelling, and it was driving me crazy. And I think I somewhat subconsciously started making Captain Logan like go in a character direction. Or at least trying to do that, you know? And then eventually it just turned into this full-blown story. The ending changed a bunch of times in my head as I was going along, as tends to happen when you're writing a story and allowing the character to kind of drive what's going on with his actions. And we're going to have some time here in a little bit, by the way, to talk about all this crazy stuff we're seeing right now with the backyard fights and all those things.
With all the different endings that you kind of considered,
yeah,
you did have several conversations with Dan, Eric, me,
you, yeah,
and your wife. I assume Jason even at times.
Yeah, sure.
Where you would have different ideas bounced off here, or you would bounce ideas off people. You would. We even toyed with.
That's how I write stories.
Having the end fight being in an actual graveyard, which we kind of thought would ruin some of the metafiction.
I didn't like that. Pierce was pushing for that. I didn't care for that. Pierce wanted to do the final fight on a roof. We looked for a roof forever to do that fight on. And
found one, lost it.
A lot of the reason,
where did the roof go?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that roof. It was like Sunnydale at the end of Buffy season 7. What ultimately ended up happening with let me backtrack for a minute. What happened with the direction the story ended up going and how expansive it got was the second sugar coma. It was already more of a story. I mean, all the stuff in the game room and all the stuff that Dooms Vince is saying, and even the idea of Dooms Vince as a clone and all of that had come before that, but it got even more complicated when the costume came. Because I'll tell this story real quick.
You blame Pierce.
Pierce is a local police officer who was watching a Spawn Year when he was on patrol and had nothing to do. Slap yourself in the face. By the way, my stepdad is a big Spawn Year fan. He's watched every episode and has the distinction of being the only person who has commented on every single episode. And his favorite thing is Violator.
That's funny.
And a lot of people didn't like the Violator. But Jeff thought it was great, and part of the reason that it kept coming back was because Jeff would keep telling me things about how much he liked the Violator. and I kept using them. Anyway, so this silly intermission was a little thing that I shot for the red carpet premiere that we had, and I left it in for this because I thought that this would give us a chance to extrapolate and talk about some things that just passed us by too fast in the recap. But anyway, so yeah, I just shot this like the night before that, and this was based on, there's an episode, I think it's like 296, I think, where I open an episode doing this kind of stuff because this is my personal training. This is supposed to be my personal training session when I'm not being trained by stocky Frank Miller Batman. And I had a lot of fun shooting this, and I found this music. All the music comes from Incompetech.com, Kevin MacLeod's royalty-free music that a lot of people on YouTube use, and there was a lot of stuff in there that I thought fit Spawn Year really well. So even though sometimes it gets kind of overused, I really liked it, and I found myself using a lot of it, and it just became kind of an easy place to go to. So anyway.
There's something that I find interesting that Spawn Year is kind of so isolative for you, if that's a word. I don't know. And
well, isolating, sure.
Yeah, there we go. Isolating. You be the English major. I'll just make stuff up.
That's cool.
It's not like I have the same degree.
No, we'll just pretend like your most recent going to school.
Yeah, I had to delete certain memories. So
that's right.
But, I mean, it's so interesting.
Physical therapy just erase the English, yeah. I'm kidding.
As you get further along in Spawn Year, and the more people that help you in Spawn Year, the more characters you introduce. Now, granted, most of those characters are you, but the more people who start helping, the more people or the more characters are introduced into Spawn Year. I find that interesting.
Yeah, and that wasn't on purpose. If there's any correlation there. I honestly, the reason there are so many characters in the second Sugar Coma, or it's not ultimately a second Sugar Coma, but that's what it's played as at the time, is because there is no Doomsvince anymore, and I felt like I needed a supporting cast of some kind to fill in for that, and I didn't want it to just be one person, because anything I introduced, a lot of people would be like, well, this feels like the way we switched out Zordon for that chick that only speaks in questions in Turbo. Like anything I did was not gonna be as cool. It was so obnoxious that eventually they just quit writing her like that, and for no reason at all she started not speaking in questions anymore. But anyway, so and then I fall asleep. But I kind of thought, people are gonna miss Doomsvince. They don't know the long-term plan. At that point, I already knew more about what the ending was going to be, the way that it turned out. I knew that Doomsvince was going to come back, and I wanted people to wonder if he was gone, because nobody understands what in the world Spawn Year is until the very end, unless somebody calls it. I'd be interested to know if anybody totally called the that it's technology and all of that. But anyway, so.
Or that they reproduced Spawn Year.
So that or that it turns into this crazy metafiction thing. But the other reason that I made it a cast of characters like that was I've lost my train of thought. I know what it was. It was because I came up with this whole idea of different characters represent different parts of my psyche. The one place I hadn't really explored yet with this whole I might be in my own head thing is, what if it's all in existential quandary? And I wanted to create a whole bunch of different what if it's this or what if it's this. So at the same time as I introduce the bogus Pepsi versus Coke cosmic celestial war thing, I also introduce, in order to confuse Captain Logan and the audience to a degree, I also introduce this idea of Captain Cog represents Captain Logan's rationality, and all he has to do is quit reading or kill himself, and he'll wake up. And Freakadoo, and again, this is not me analyzing my work. This is all in there. They all tell him what they are, or at least Captain Cog analyzes it. I should also say that there is some self-analysis that happens in Spawn Year, and part of that is because, and that's usually a big no-no, but the reason I did it here was because it's a story about a reviewer. He's reviewing this fiction, and he can't help himself but to review the world around him also. And so we did that.
You mean the character doing self-analysis is a
yeah,
big no-no?
yeah.
For some reason, I thought what you were saying was that the writer doing self-analysis is a big no-no, and I went, what? Why?
No. I'm just saying that the character in the thing. Yeah.
I mean, Spawn kind of self-analyzes. I mean, he's largely wrong because McFarlane doesn't know what he's doing. But
yeah.
So, I mean, in some ways, you're still keeping with the conceit, with the parallels and whatnot.
Part of the reason it took as long as it took was because the costume was hard to get in and out of, and once we went to that, I could not figure out how to shoot by myself. After a few months, I finally came up with a process where I could get the whole thing off and on in about 4 minutes by myself. But it took a long time to get there. 10 to 15 with another person.
Oh yeah.
It just took a while to figure out what the suit could handle, because I was always worried about ripping things apart and messing stuff up. I didn't know what I could do with that cape. And I figured out how to get it on by myself. And it's not real heavy, but it's bulky. It's like, how do you get it on? How can you tell that it's on right? We don't have it connected in anything, and you can kind of tell because there are places where I have to readjust it. I have to do kind of the Riker maneuver. I have to kind of readjust it.
So how long did you spend having to wait for Sarah to get home in order to shoot?
You mean like how long did we do it like that?
Yeah.
Several months. The first couple months of the first month and a half of the costume, we did it like that. And then after that, we switched places. There was one episode where I wanted Captain Cog and Captain Spawn, or maybe it was Freaky and Captain Spawn, I forget, both in the shot at once, and I thought it would look better if I didn't have to composite. There are places later when she couldn't be in the suit anymore where I had to do it like that, and sometimes it looked okay, and sometimes you can totally see where the seam is. But if you look close enough, there are places where the chair no longer has cape on the front. Like, there's cape coming down, and then there's a place where there's no cape anymore. That's because of the compositing process, and I didn't think to put that cape down there in the other side of it. But anyway, so but for about 30, 40, maybe even 50 episodes, Sarah is in the costume. And like we both are about the same size, and she fit in it. In fact, the actual the mask fits her better than it fits me.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's tighter on me. She's got a little bit more room in there.
fair enough.
Which sometimes became a little bit problematic with the glow stick, which is how we make the eyes glow up green, because sometimes it would be loose enough that it would pop out and we'd have to put it back in.
Well, yeah, the easy thing is stop having such a big head.
Yeah, well, the thing is, that was the one thing that was better for me putting it on, because the glow stick stayed in place better.
No, it's a good one.
By the way, you can't see through that thing at all.
I wouldn't assume you could.
And you especially can't see through it. I especially couldn't see through it the last 40 or 50 days of shooting, maybe a little bit less than that, because I asked Pierce to do some touch-up work on it, because every now and again you have to repaint things, you have to re-glue stuff, and I asked Pierce to repaint it and fix a couple things on it, and he did that, and then when he gave it back to me, it had cataracts on one side. Because he had to re-glue in the eye. There's eyepieces, and that helps that glow effect look better, because there's actually green in front of it, so it doesn't look like there's like open rims. So there's something there. It just looks better. And so anyway, when he glued it back in, it fogged up permanently. And it looks okay. You can tell in places. There's probably even places in the episode we're watching right now where you could see it. But anyway, it was still okay for camera, but you can't see out of that eye now. And there's already such little visibility. Part of the reason that I wasn't shooting by myself before, too, was because it took me a really long time to get used to how little visibility I had. And now I'm just used to not being able to see as well. But it is hard to set up shots. There are places in Spawn here where I had to, in regular episodes, where I had to crop sections because you can see stuff offset. Just because when I set it up, I can't see it very well. So, like, you know, off to the side, and be like, oh, I couldn't even tell that I set this shot up wrong. There's something. I mean, there's a lot of really crazy guerrilla style stuff. Let's talk costume and props. These wings are completely store bought. Pierce did not make those. He actually just happened to have those in his garage, and when I was over there, actually, to get my mask back and find out that it had cataracts, and I was like, hey, I'd love to do wings. I always wanted to do a wing thing. I never found a good place for it, and then right then I thought, hey, Pierce, I think I know what I would do with wings. Can I borrow those? So he gave them to me. He hadn't even opened them. He hadn't used them yet. Pierce buys up random Halloween stuff for costumes because he's constantly making suits and stuff.
He just looks for good deals.
It's a hobby of his, yeah. And especially when the Halloween stores close, he'll go in and he'll drop a little money and walk out with bagfuls of stuff and use them later.
Yeah,
so
I mean, there's no telling what he's going to end up using stuff for. I mean, he would just make things, bring it over, and say, "Can you use this?"
So even after we had completely shot and I had, I think, almost entirely edited the whole finale, I still hadn't. Well, most of the finale, everything but the reviews in 364 and 365, I hadn't even come up yet with the Wings of Refreshment. And the Wings of Refreshment idea came to me while I was writing the review for 355 when Sarah as the Coke Angel gives me those wings. So I already had the idea that I'm going to get wings. I thought it would be a cool aesthetic. I was like, okay, so she just has Captain Spawn get the wings as like a reminder of what he could have if he chose to go with her. And then later on, I came up with this idea of well, shouldn't he at some point, like, think about flying? Like, if you had wings, wouldn't you think about flying? And so then I came up with this idea of, well, every time Captain Spawn goes too far off the beaten path and, like, starts trying stuff and messing with the status quo, bad things always happen to him. And I tried not to do too much of that later on because I didn't want to backtrack story-wise and character-wise. At a certain point, fictional me says, I'm gonna review all the way to the end no matter what happens. So, but that was the thing where I said, well, what's the worst that can happen if I flap my wings a few times, right? And then, coke in the veins! And, I thought that was kind of a fun idea. So I wanted to do something with them. I didn't want to just have a prop. And there are a few things like that in Spawn here where it's like, why does Freakadoo have a scythe? Because the Freak has a scythe, that's why. He never does anything with it. It's just there.
That's really fun. You know, I mean, that's what's kind of clever about it, though. If the character never does anything with it, but it's a thing, and then you give your character that, I mean, that's a parallel in and of itself.
No, you're right, because I don't think Freak hardly ever does anything with his scythe either. I didn't think of that. Well, anyway, so now we get into the big story stuff for the finale proper, and I mean, there's a bunch of stuff we haven't talked about that I'd love to cover if we have time here. But I mean, already 45 minutes in. I guess this has been my life for 2 years. There's so much to talk about.
No, I mean, in some ways you went through your own Spawn year. Like, I realize that this is a fictionalized Spawn year, but there was quite a lot of the time, if we're not getting too personal here, where you would start, I don't want to say going crazy literally, but figuratively. You started kind of having moments like, Vince, I don't know if I can review anymore.
Here's the thing. Part of the reason that folks did not get a lot of Superhero Rewind while I was doing Spawn year was because I felt really numb reading this much bad fiction, and I need to detox so bad now after getting done with this whole thing that like I'm not trying to be melodramatic about it. It's just that when your standards naturally get lowered, no matter how hard you try, when you are constantly inundated with really awkward phrasing and plotting that doesn't make sense but keeps pretending like it does, and stuff that just meanders and never goes anywhere. You know, all the things that I talked about with why the majority of Spawn doesn't work and is really kind of pointless and is really insulting to a readership. That it like I said, it kind of numbs you. You know, it's like eating junk food all the time.
A cracker is a feast to a starving man.
And so part of the reason that that it took as long as it did, I mean, the costume had a lot to do with it. All the stuff we had to shoot for the finale here, which we'll get into. All of this, by the way, started in February of this year. So I mean, we've been shooting stuff for this 3-part finale for over half a year.
Which, I mean, in some ways we had to do that because you hadn't finished the reviews yet, in which I realized this stuff was finished before the reviews, but you hadn't completed everything that far ahead, so we had to kind of do things incrementally.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I know a lot of things I know a lot of movies and things shoot out of sequence, but like I said, I didn't even have all the story of the main episodes written yet, and that's a big no-no. I really hate that I had to do it that way, but I think ultimately it worked out okay.
Well, I mean, it kind of turned into a larger project as the thing went along.
Well, it did, yeah.
So, I mean, you didn't anticipate the level that this would get to need costumes and whatnot.
But what I was going to say is part of the reason that it took as long as it did was there were times where I just had to take a break from reading and writing about all of that just really not good fiction. And I don't know, it like...
Real quick,
yeah,
that kick actually connected.
Yes, it did.
So there's a couple of things in here where you say, yeah, this guy didn't actually hit him, but right there, I kicked the crap out of his knee.
Well, let's actually talk about this fight. First of all, I hurt myself pretty bad.
Oh God!
When we were doing this,
not in my belt buckle.
There's nowhere where you could really notice that it happened here, I don't think. But I mean, just inside of this, but. I get knocked back, and at one point and hit my back on the doorknob because we covered up all the walls and I couldn't see where it was. And that was really, really painful.
Oh god, it hit him right in the, I think it was your right lower back.
The first time you saw
Right
that
there.
effect, you lost your mind.
I thought that was so funny.
These effects were done for us by Sid Part 2, who did all the visual effects for me for this series,
Thanks, Sid.
with the exception of a couple of stock things that I just pulled off from online in places. Like there's an explosion a little bit later here that he didn't do. I just found, and also the glass break at the comic shop was something that I just found.
And for any of you who wonder why, there's a can on the ground and now it's suddenly back in the holster, or the things fall down and they're suddenly back up, this is magic, so deal with it.
And that was a conversation we had while we were shooting this. I was like, well, Vince, it's going to be obvious that it fell and came back up, and you were like, well, it's this surreal location, and anything can happen. And I was like, okay, but someone's going to question it. Vince, I was really glad to finally get you in one of these latex suits so you could feel my pain a little bit.
Hot, sweaty, it's ridiculous.
But totally worth it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And we had a lot of...
This was, what, a 4-hour shoot?
I think it was longer than that, actually.
Maybe so.
Because it went pretty late. I think that night...
Midnight. Yeah.
I think I showed up early, and then it went to
Well,
at least
but
11:30.
we weren't able to start shooting until after dinner, if you'll recall.
Yeah, we
did a lot of choreography early on
Don't worry,
in the day.
Captain Logan. This will be both
I should
delicious
wear more turtlenecks. Look at that.
and
Yeah,
refreshing.
you look really attractive there, Vince, with
For
your
posterity's sake.
Coke shoulder pads.
I'm totally going
This
to
is
make a
the
Doctor
end
Doom costume.
of Spawn here.
you really should do that. That was an image that I had about midway through Spawn Year. The image of Doom's Vince as the Coke Redeemer, taking his mask off and revealing himself to Captain Spawn. Now, I didn't, however, always know who was going to be the victor in that fight. I always had the idea. I always wanted to do a fake reality where Doom's Vince was married to Sarah, but there was a time where that was going to happen earlier on in the year, actually. I considered it. I'm really glad we did it this way. I finally decided that it made the most sense if this was like the Spawn Year program's last-ditch effort. Make Captain Spawn think for any amount of time at all that this reality, this crazy reality where Doom's Vince is married to his wife is real, and maybe he won't be able to review that last comic.
This layering really cool, by the way.
I'm sorry, what's that?
So that video layering is really cool.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was fun. That took a couple hours to put together. That was a lot of fun to make, and I just kept adding stuff. Like I was like, it's not enough. There's not enough stuff on it. I gotta keep adding stuff. There's probably layers in there that you don't even notice. Like I went in and found a background of like Coke bubbles, and I put that behind it.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that.
We had almost
There's a lot of stuff. I bought a lot of props for this show.
DMV.
Over the 2 years, I spent a few $1,000s on this show. Some of that was some of that was comics I didn't have. And some of the comics are rare low print runs when Spawn wasn't selling very well, and like there's some really bad comics I spent $20, $30 on.
There's no reason for it to have sold that well.
And like, you know, I could have gotten stuff in trade and read it that way, but I wanted the props. I wanted every single comic to appear in my hands in every episode, and they do. So I was pretty happy about that. But yeah, so DMV, I had to buy that. The DMV thing I always thought was really funny. I set that up way earlier in Spawn Year. When Captain Spawn, well, when he's Captain Logan, fictional Captain Logan, when he reads ahead and reads Spawn 185 in the graveyard. I mean, in the open grave, there's a note from Doom's Vince, and it's signed DMV, and I wanted to keep playing with that because I thought it was funny. So you see a lot of callbacks to things, and I think hopefully some decent payoffs of stuff. Brandon, we didn't talk about in the last show in the big fight. That's a callback to an episode where we find out that the only thing that Captain Spawn can transform into is Brandon. And I thought it would be fun to bring that back in that big fight.
Which, I mean, you were a little disappointed that you weren't the one that got to make the big blast with his hands.
But I'm
Was I?
Yeah. You're like, but I've been practicing. Oh, all right, we'll do it this way.
I was not practicing. We had a rule during this shoot that, with the exception of the basement, anytime Dooms Vince is on camera, there must be also a picture of Dooms Vince's head in the frame as well.
Got that picture. Is so funny.
The day I showed you the wedding photo, you lost it.
That was because just the idea, and that's something I do quite a lot. Like I'll put on some demented smile and I'll lean into camera or something like that. And I like to do that just when people suddenly like look at you and they're not paying attention, then they notice you're looking at them and you're looking all crazy. And I feel like that just perfectly encapsulates that part of my personality.
Sarah and I talked about trying to figure out how to get a picture of Dooms Vince and Sarah on their wedding day together. We thought about putting her, this was before she was pregnant, we thought about putting her, or before she was showing, I think. We tried to put Sarah, or we talked about putting Sarah back in her wedding dress, but she didn't really want to do that. I didn't really want to do it either. And you're the one, I think, that came up with the idea of, well, why don't you just superimpose my face right in front of Sarah just sitting there? Wouldn't that be hilarious? If he just gets into the shot, I was like, at first I wasn't sure I could make it look good. I thought it was funny, but I was like, I don't know if we can do. And then I photoshopped it, and I don't know, it looked pretty good.
Is a multi-million subscriber
Oh my
channel.
god!
But once again, look how expressive Vince is. I mean, just all these different pictures. I think there's 6 or 8 of them.
You in every endeavor.
I don't know. I don't remember. We just kind of grabbed them and put them up around.
Well, we shot several. I actually photoshopped and printed every one that we shot because they were all very different. And I think we bought I bought like 4 or 6 frames and we just traded them out some, for different rooms. Loquacious mock sophistication, I think, is one of my favorite line deliveries from you.
That's the thing, though, is that some of the stuff that you're doing so well with Doomsday's dialogue is stuff that you can over-enunciate.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the key to the Doomsday's curiously ethnic, ambiguous accent.
Well, and I appreciate the compliment about his dialogue, but I think it's also important to note that some of Doomsday's best lines are improvised lines. There are some places where you'll either add a thing that wasn't in the script, or you'll change something slightly, or there were a couple places where you just straight up said, "Hey, can I say this other thing?" And sometimes I would resist it, but we'd shoot it anyway. And some of the time, when I would be like, Vince, I don't know, man, I really think what I wrote's what you need to say. And then in the finale, you'll see what you did.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, though, is that
Especially at the party. You remember, I did not like that line that you wanted to do, and it's in there.
And which I do appreciate.
Not because I'm being nice. I liked it. I liked it better ultimately.
Jason?
That's
I just didn't know how it would play. There's Dooms Jason. We made him say "I'm Dooms Jason" probably 20 times.
And I think he was so excited to say his line.
He just wasn't projecting enough in some places, and some of it too was.
Now mine.
This was some dialogue you were tripping over a little bit, so we had to make him say it a bunch of times. It's all your fault.
There's a couple of curse words said in front of Jason. And,
oh, Vince!
There were a few things where Jay would say, kid. And I'd say, oh, yeah.
Jason got...
Snooze, you lose.
You snooze, you lose was a thing that I wasn't sure I liked when we shot it. Not because I put it in the script, but I was like, I don't know if that's too on the nose or whatever. When we showed this to an audience, everybody died at that.
Which is real. I mean, it's you don't say that to somebody who was just in a coma, and that's what's so funny about it, because that's kind of like innocently dark humor.
I don't think it's funny on paper. I think the way you did it is what made it work. The Magic 8 Ball thing is a callback to the Magic 8 Skull.
I love this one.
Yeah, that was great. The Magic 8 Ball, I put in the script once again as another kind of callback for longtime viewers that have been paying attention, because I thought it would make a lot of sense if Captain Logan was like, maybe Dan Torrey put his message in here also. We haven't talked about Dan Torrey.
Yeah, Dan.
Dan literally and figuratively co-created Spawn Year. And it's so cool that the credits turned out the way they did, because from the very beginning it says Dan's name is first, and it's Spawn Year created by Dan Torrey and Captain Logan. And that's because Spawn Year came out of a joke that Dan and I had together. Dan came up with this idea, hey, you did Tick Month, what if you did Spawn Year? And I thought it was hilarious. And then I decided to do it, and then it turned into this. And then eventually I made him a mad scientist, and he actually physically creates Spawn Year. Now, to be totally accurate, though, it should say Spawn Year created by Dan Torrey, Dooms Vince, and then Captain Logan maybe in parentheses.
Tiny Adam West grew me for a fight. He knew I couldn't win. And then pit me up against
fictional
a day before the last inning.
was created by Captain Logan.
If you ask me what my favorite thing about the entirety of Spawn Year has been, it's probably showing this in front of an audience.
Yeah. What about showing it in front of an audience? I mean, other than just getting it out of your head, your own head. But,
you know, every time something didn't
everybody took it seriously.
It was always
like they laughed at stuff, but what I mean is they were laughing with it. Like it was a legitimate project to everybody, and it's such a weird project. I wasn't sure that people would go with it. I wasn't sure they'd get it. Everybody seemed so pleasantly surprised that it was feature length, and that they basically got to see a movie, and a lot of the humor hit. But the biggest thing for me was that I got so close to it that I started taking the whole thing really seriously, and I forgot that it was a comedy. And I can't believe that so much of the humor plays the way it does, because this became the world I embodied. And so if you step outside of it, it's ridiculous. I mean, look at what you're doing right now. You know, this was another idea I had while I was writing the script, where I was like, we really need to have some place where we get to see Dooms Vince be all those characters I was, because the idea is Dooms Vince is there the whole time, and I'm glad we decided to go ahead and put it in.
Yeah, I like this setup too. Seems like a classic Hollywood thing to do.
Well, this was your idea, putting me in the corner like this. A lot of this blocking was your idea. This is your very best acting in the entire project. If you look at what Vince is doing in this scene while I'm talking, keep in mind, by the way, that this took 5 or 6 takes to get right, because I was flubbing out my speech a little bit. Vince knows it so well at this point that if you really pay attention to his facial expressions, everything is incredibly natural, and you have all these different ways of reacting. This is something I cannot do. Like, this is it's totally organic. And it seems like you are responding in the moment like you've never heard any of this before. It's absolutely excellent acting.
I appreciate that. Yeah. You know,
it wasn't something I noticed. Well, I couldn't have noticed it when we were doing it because I wasn't looking at you. But I had to watch the whole thing on the whole before I even caught it. But I'm sorry, real fast. The other thing I was going to say about watching it in front of an audience was that I got to step out of myself and actually just enjoy the thing. Like, I got to see it like a member of an audience. And I don't know, man, it was really fun to get to. I had just watched it all the way through to look for mistakes the night before, to look for possible revisions the night before. And it was like a totally different experience.
So you believe that in order to escape this,
I think you've become a better actor throughout. I mean,
I'm still not a very good actor, but
well, I mean, self-critique, whatever. But I think that it's kind of like Smallville, right? You know, you got the what's his name?
You're my Rosenbaum. You're Rosenbaum to my Tom Welling.
Yeah, Tom. I could not think of Tom Welling to save my life. But I mean, he starts off not very good.
Everybody died at this picture.
That's so funny.
That was another thing people thought was really funny.
I like that there's still like video games and Star Trek stuff on Dooms Vince's fridge.
Yeah, that was a mistake. I should have taken all that down. Because Dooms Vince wouldn't have left that stuff.
Yeah, hadn't even occurred to me.
When we shot it, it didn't occur to me either. And well, actually, it did. I was in a hurry and thought I should take everything out of this fridge, and then I didn't. And yeah, I kind of regret that now. But
this scene.
Oh, okay, we should talk about the Coke spray. Yeah.
Yeah, this scene worked out really well because I feel like we were both convincingly angry.
Do you like how this turned out?
I think that's really funny.
Yeah, the thing is,
I wish we would have put in a line like, well, you go ahead. I need to clean my floor, you jerk, or something.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like, why doesn't Dooms Vince chase after him? But the reason is because Dooms Vince never physically attacks Captain Logan. He's trying to beat him with his mind. And even, the dish thing. That was that wasn't entirely ad-libbed, but we wrote it on the day. We kind of wrote it together. Like there were. I said, let's do something with the Con Revenge is a Dish Best Served Cold line, and Vince kind of came up with it based on that. But anyway, I was just
Jay
like,
said, make it funny. So I mean,
yeah, exactly. But regarding the Coke spray thing, so what I was going to say a second ago, sorry, is that, like, yeah, there's a little bit of physical confrontation with Captain Logan or official Captain Logan earlier in Spawn Year and the clones, which we should also talk about you playing.
oh yeah.
But if you'll notice, they're never that hard to beat. But anyway, so the Coke spray thing, that was supposed to be an actual spray. We thought it would work. We tried it 3 times. We could never get it to work.
Oh
and
God, we did everything.
we were gonna later on add an insert in post. And once I edited it together, I decided it was kind of okay. And I think it's funny the way it is. But
I think it's
don't know.
pretty funny. The ice looks cool right there, hanging down.
You know, that wasn't planned. I shot that because I thought it looked cool. I thought I didn't know where I was going to use it. I just shot it. And I didn't know if I would use it. I just wanted it.
Was it there on the day?
Oh, yeah. That was actually, we were on our way to the car, and I was about to leave, and I turned around and I saw that. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I pulled my camera back out and I shot it. And then it turned out to be a decent transition, I think.
I'm really one of those turtles.
Vince, I agonized about this. Because we shot, here it comes. That is so ridiculous. So we shot me pulling that up and swinging, and I can't believe I decided to do the follow-through, because the plan originally was to do an insert where I would break actual glass.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, I did the whole thing because I was able to do a silly, goofy CG thing. And the reason we didn't do the insert is because we couldn't find a place that had close enough lighting. Because there's all that neon and stuff around. It wouldn't make any sense. We couldn't figure out how to shoot it.
Which, it just kind of surprised me you didn't just have the glass break off screen and then you're in.
I thought, I couldn't figure out a way to make to transition it.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it would seem too cheap. And yeah, like we have this really cheap effect, but
well, it's not bad looking for being homemade.
Well, and again, the thing is, I got to where I wanted stuff to look kind of homemade, because the idea is it's a metafiction, so this is what we've created based on what I allegedly actually went through. And so, shouldn't stuff be kind of homemade? That's the reason that I started really resisting the idea of shooting the Coke Redeemer fight on location, because everything inside Spawn Year is shot in or around my house.
Right, except for the running thing.
But the idea was, wouldn't it be cool, this is my idea, wouldn't it be cool if Spawn Year doesn't go to any other locations until it is trying to convince Captain Logan that he's in reality?
I think that worked.
I hope so. That was the idea. It was really cool, by the way, of William at Elite Comics to let us use his store that night.
It's super nice. And he was just very calm throughout the whole thing. He didn't get impatient. He seemed pleased
I
to
think
be
he
a
thought the
part
whole
of it.
thing was really funny. Just watching it. He had no idea what he was looking at.
He's going, I haven't seen the rest of this. What's going on?
But yeah, it was really cool of him to do that. He's done me a lot of favors over the last couple of years, and I really appreciate him. He's going to be in the Midwestern panels. Well, he's in the Midwestern panels. We just haven't finished editing it yet. But
you know, you mentioned that line earlier that it'll always be possible to review on time, and I like how that's kind of become the driving motivation for this last episode.
Which is really kind of funny and a little ironic, because it took us 2 years to make it.
It'll always be possible to review eventually.
I want to talk a little bit about stuff that was not my idea. Killing Doomsvince was Sarah's idea.
Right.
And I did... No, I'm sorry. Killing Doomsvince was Eric's idea. Eric and I had a phone conversation. I kept a couple people throughout this in the loop on everything I was doing with Spawn Year, so that I had people to bounce ideas off of and stuff. And Eric actually has a credit of additional story concepts at the end of this. Because that was him, and Spawn Year would have gone in a very different direction if we hadn't killed off Doomsvince. air quotes. And the idea of doing it the way we did it with Sarah, of doing this weird, again, meta inside of Spawn Year thing of, what if Captain Logan kills him while he is saying what day it is? And I'm like, who is he saying it to?
He's just sitting off in the middle of nowhere.
Then once you know what the whole metafiction is, you gotta wonder if that's the way it happened in the real Spawn Year or not, because that's for the audience's benefit. So how exactly did all of this really go down?
We may never know.
We will never know. I certainly don't know.
Just like how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Spawn Year? We may never know.
I was just really lucky that a lot of these ideas panned out because, like I said, so much of this was not in the original plan, and I had to try to, I didn't want to do it if it wasn't going to fit with what I had. I didn't want to retcon. I didn't, I mean, like, wouldn't it be really awful if we started, like really obviously changing things and not having any forethought while reviewing this comic book? It was really important that and I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just saying it was really important to make as much sense as possible. And hopefully I did that. This is not me saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm great and I made a better story than McFarlane did," but that was what I was trying to do.
Well, I don't feel like it's hard to make a better story. I'm just kidding.
So
I'm just right.
So importantly, the origin of Vince was not in our heads when we started all this. And like I said, in so many ways, we got super, super lucky. Because at the beginning, it wasn't even really Vince. We thought it was like, it's a dream I'm having. We don't even know why Vince so has so much of a problem with Captain Logan and his reviewing, and it seems like he's just jealous for no good reason. And I decided if I'm gonna try to make fictional Captain Logan a sympathetic character, I've got to make Vince a sympathetic villain, or at least make him make some kind of sense. He's got to have a real beef, And so then we try to make the beef happen, and I. Again, I'm really happy with it. I mean, clone is maybe the obvious way to go, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, that's the thing, though, is
to put together. And
it had never occurred to me that Vince could be a clone. I mean, we've always had it in our heads that Vince was really just like a villainous Vince, like my alter ego.
And then he pretends that he's actually this other person, and you never really know if they're different or not. And we always had this silly idea of like Vince and Captain Logan went to college together, and Captain Logan pursued his degree, and he went off and became a relatively successful reviewer, and he could never get a job, and so he hates Captain Logan. And I actually, in Spawn Year, put that in as the stupid thing we tell people because we don't want them to know about the crimes against nature that we've committed.
Which is funny in and of itself. Because crimes against nature are always funny, to be realistic.
But talking about stuff that I got really lucky on, so many things that lined up with the comics that just happened to line up, and that I took the opportunity and drew it to the forefront. One of the backyard fights with the combat training with Stocky Frank Miller Batman just happened to line up with an issue that was all about a combat Spawn who was in like Vietnam or something. It just happened to line up, so I drew that out, in the narrative and talked about comparisons and things. And then this I got really lucky with. 220 I picked for the ending because it was a nice round number and because it was a few issues before the month where I was at the end of 2012 when I started all this, and it was the anniversary issue. But I hadn't read it in a while, and I did not remember that it was an homage, it was an homage and a callback completely to the first issue. So I got this bookend.
Oh.
And did not know I was going to get that, and that's why I'm telling everybody that the first episode is required viewing, because I call back to that first issue in 220 all over the place, and that first entry. So the entry 1, I begin with the very first lines of review in Spawn Year are Todd McFarlane is not a writer, and I bookend that with 220.
That's cool. Todd McFarlane is an artist.
So there's a part of me after watching this that kind of wished that we had put the pen down, no, let me keep working, put the pen down, no, let me keep working, go for another 2 minutes. He says, "Don't put the pen down," like 4 times.
Did it really hurt?
That really hurt. Yep, that was not acting right there, Vince.
You know, I had I know this kid who said to me, handcuffs really hurt. Now, I've been handcuffed myself, and I was handcuffed because, well, no great reason. A cop put the handcuffs on me as a joke. Moving on. There's a kid that came up to me and said, handcuffs really hurt. I've been handcuffed and thrown to the ground a few times. And, these cops are just mean. And I said, here's a hint, bud. Just a little life tip for you. You don't like handcuffs, don't do illegal stuff.
Vince, this scream that you do at the end is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
We brought Vince in. So the day we shot this was the same day that we shot all the running in the snow and all that stuff. By the way, that was super cold. Oh my god, that was awful. I knew it was going to be awful when I did it. I did it anyway. It was still awful.
We didn't make him run the whole way. We drove and stopped.
We stopped in a few places, and shot that. But it was the same day we did that. We were late getting to the comic book store because of it. It was, anyway. And so then, we had Vince shoot his scream. That was the very first thing we shot at the comic book store, and then we didn't need him anymore, so we just shot it, and then you just left. And then we shot the rest of it, which is kind of funny. And here comes a whole bunch of exposition.
Introposition.
Of your own making.
Vince, of your own making. That came back over and over and over again. Remember, we argued when we first shot the prologue about how you should say that, and that was one thing that I'm glad I won on, because the way we ultimately got you to say it and the way it keeps coming back, I think plays pretty funny.
I think the melodrama of it. I ended up really liking that of your own making, and which I mean is also in the same vein as "Do not deny me my melodrama."
That, by the way, was another ad-lib. That wasn't a script. Vince came up with that, and Vince,
I did not remember that.
You came up with that. You also came up with. I've got the proof. I could show it to you. You also came up with in a notebook instead of a word processor because I thought it would be mean.
Which, I mean, that was born out of a joke that you initially had and axed because you couldn't figure out a snappy way of wording it.
Yeah, no, the way you did it was fantastic.
And unusual.
That's hilarious and unusual.
The green lighting here is practical lighting. There's on the alleyway set. I use a filter for the green. I actually have some practical green light there. There's a green light on the ceiling, but it doesn't create as much as we have here. And actually, I had a hard time getting the green to be as bright and come out as much here as I did in the prologue. It was everything I could do. It is not green enough. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but this is a little blurry. And it wasn't on purpose. I think it's okay. It honestly looks a little bit more like we've got the fog machine going on in here, but we don't. But what happened was I had shot something earlier that day and had to put it on off autofocus and manually focus it for something, and I forgot to take it off that setting. And so when we shot that, it was a little blurry. And that day I looked at it and I went, "Oh no, we're gonna have to reshoot." And I looked at it and I blew it up a little bit and I said, "Nah, I think it'll work." And then months later, when I actually fully edited it together, it's not nearly as blurry as I remember it being that day.
You know what's kind of cool about it though is that you look at a picture that's loading, it's pixelated, it's blurry, it's weird, and in some ways this is like the program shutting down.
Oh, that's cool if you want to really read too far into it. Yeah,
I will read too far into anything to make it work. Here we go.
Oh, Vince. I remember on the day here, there were a couple points where you had to remind me there were candles there so that I wouldn't set myself on fire.
Don't dip your cape in the candle.
There was a little bit of that. This was another speech that took forever for me to get through. Sorry about that, Vince.
Which, I mean, that's the thing though, is that we read through the script and we kind of like planned inserts. So we were like, this will be a stop. This is where we'll turn to see a reaction or something like that. To where it's not just a talking head.
Well, and if I were a more experienced actor, I'd be better at memorizing dialogue.
Well, but that's the thing, though, is that a more experienced
I
actor...
drove around all day that day, repeating all this in my head over and over again. I was at Chuck E. Cheese with my kid that day, playing games, just running this through my head.
I mean, I feel like the performances that we gave and the memorization level that we had were good enough, because a lot of this was done on the day. You wrote the dialogue, you handed me the dialogue, and then neither of us had the time to memorize it. We just kind of shot. We have lives. It's not like this is the only thing.
So I had to redress my basement to try to look like what it looked like in 2012 when we shot this originally. Obviously, the things changed. I have a third monitor now. The 360 is no longer down here. I had to move some things back around. But I'll point out a mistake I made. I forgot that the speaker set I have now is not the same speaker set I had back then. So I do have the wrong speakers in this scene.
Oh well.
This is not champagne. It is sweet tea. It is diluted sweet tea. It's sweet tea with so much water in it that it tastes horrible.
What? Oh, you wanted to look more like champagne.
I was trying to make it look more like champagne. I still think it didn't really work.
Should have just used whiskey.
Oh, sure, Vince. Yeah. Well, and Sarah and I had to shoot this 3 or 4 times, so I'm glad we didn't use actual alcohol. We actually brought down a jug of tea and kept filling these.
That's really funny. You guys should use white tea. It would have been less.
White tea.
Would have been lighter.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if this looks enough like champagne. Champagne's not quite that brown.
It hadn't occurred to me. I mean, that's the thing, though, is that...
Well, you start thinking about all these details when you're, you try to think about details when you're shooting this stuff to try to get consistent. I mean, a lot of what I think is cool about the series and what I enjoyed about doing it was attention to detail. And so you think about that stuff. And then you think about it a lot more when you edit it together and you have to watch it 17 times. I look at things like this sometimes and I go, like I'm not a real filmmaker. I learned a lot making this show. A lot of why I wanted to do this was to learn how to make things look cinematic and stuff. And I'm learning a lot, but I still kind of feel like I don't really know what I'm doing. I look at this scene and I'm like, if I'd done this again now, I'd have probably cut and then moved over more to where we are because we've got dialogue and it's a little too far away from the microphone, or I would have mic'd it differently.
I love that it's labeled Spawn here.
And you can see the tape.
That's really funny to me.
That's another thing that I was like, maybe I should have made that prop look better. But then I kept letting the props, this is going to sound lazy, but I kept letting the props look really silly in places because it's supposed to be a homemade version.
Right.
But there's some things you just want to look really good, like this one suit,
So you did know about.
I mean, that's the thing, though. It looks good, but there are times that it's a mask.
But it looks. Oh, you're talking the. Yeah. Even that you can see through it a little, right? Like you can go, okay, those are glow sticks, and
I had to be careful.
I mean, the movie magic that happens a lot of the time is that they have such good makeup that you're not sure it's a costume. I mean, well, obviously, Michael Chiklis isn't walking around looking like that, but in S.H.I.E.L.D.
He's not an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
No, he was in the movie or the TV show.
I know that. That was my joke.
Oh!
Which made me think, I wonder if anybody's ever clicked on S.H.I.E.L.D. discussions and gotten really upset that we weren't talking about Michael Chiklis.
I kind of love that idea. You should do a special S.H.I.E.L.D. discussions about
S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah. So, other little silly tidbits. That background that's on my computer, I went back to the prologue to see what I had there, because this is supposed to be the same day of the prologue. And so I went, okay, what was there? It took me like 20 minutes on a Google image search to find it again.
So you finished it in the absolute most complicated and grueling way possible.
You, sir, have a demented imagination.
You finished it in the most grueling, in the most complicated and grueling way possible.
That second sugar coma was a thing that I wasn't sure anybody would ever actually try.
My favorite delivery from Dan is when I say, why would I ever thought to look in my pockets? And Dan goes, I would have. It's just the way he says it is hilarious.
It is pretty fun. I would have looked at my pockets too, If you got pockets, who knows what's in there?
He's been watching me for months. His doomsayers are everywhere.
This whole idea that Doomsvins has these doomsayers that look through Dan's garbage and a bunch of them are our actual subscribers is something I want to kind of do something with later on.
Oh,
Once again, with that prologue, there's so much random stuff in there that just came from me coming up with jokes that like ended up turning into stuff, or could still turn into something later. And so many people have asked for Morphin Year. I've gotten a lot of requests for it. I mean, that one line, people remember it. They love that idea. I've probably had 30 or 40 people, at least, say, Captain Logan, when are you doing Morphin Year? You have to do Morphin Year. And all I will say about that right now is never say never.
Fair enough.
Again, we're not doing 007 Year. Anyway,
we're not doing 007. That's funny. We're not doing Queens of the Stone Age here either.
Vince 2.0 for you, yeah, but it was
so as you can probably tell, I superimposed Dan's footage here on that monitor, and that monitor is not plugged in.
No.
That's pretty funny.
After this, I plan to discontinue that line of research.
So yeah, Dan was really cool for doing this for me, and for helping out when he did. Dan is the one person who has his name on Spawn Year, like some of the most, and did the least amount of work. Dan has never read one issue of Spawn. He doesn't know anything about Spawn at all, except for what he's seen now in Spawn Year. And one of the things that we want to do pretty soon is a commentary on the Spawn movie with Dan. And he's never seen it, and he's not going to watch it before we do the commentary.
What? That's really funny.
Look, I understand
why not?
why you did it.
Well, because we thought it would be funny.
Oh, okay. Then mission achieved. Mission accomplished.
Because he is the co-creator of Spawn Year and knows nothing about Spawn. We thought it would be really funny if he still knew nothing about Spawn when we do that commentary.
Like nothing at all.
Yeah. So anyway,
you know, you mentioned something earlier about the failed clones.
Yes, yeah, let's talk about those and how that came together. By the way, that was also Sid Part 2 that did that compositing for me before I knew how to do that. I could do that now, but what he did with it looks pretty fun. And you see it in a bunch of episodes. There are a lot of places where I go back to it in flashbacks and stuff. And you remember the crowd lost it. Because there were a bunch of people that had never seen it before, and just during
5 composites.
It was really fun watching the recap because there were a bunch of places where like I've seen this image a million times, and people would react to stuff in the recap because they hadn't seen the episode that it was from.
Oh god, that was fun. That was one of my favorite things to do, like creating different postures to be one of the zombies or zombie-esque things.
Yeah,
and creating different facial deformities. And I was kind of sore in my upper back and my jaw as a result of that.
I bet.
Okay.
Well, you did some really exaggerated nutso kind of. I mean, you had a really Jim Carrey rubber face thing going on that day.
My favorite thing was born out of that was something I came up with taking a shower the night before I came over to shoot one day, which was the obsession with mustard. You ended up using that, right?
Well, the thing with mustard,
Stinger or something.
No, that's inside that episode. You came over one day and made the mustard joke, and we laughed about it, and it kept coming up over the next several weeks. And then when we finally brought them back, because remember we used them a couple times, like the day that we shot on the Graveyard set was different than the day when we shot in front of black. Well, it was blue. I didn't have big enough black that day. That's what this production was like. It was like, I don't have black, I'll use blue, and then we'll try to make it dark enough. That was dumb. Anyway, so by the way, I'm actually really happy with the way this all turned out. We shot this in the same room where I wake up. That's the same bed.
Yep.
Because we were at crunch time, and I thought about going over to Vince's house to shoot it, but I had a really tight schedule that week, and we were like, really, I'm gonna go over there for like 10 seconds of footage. Let's just shoot it here and shoot it really close, and that's what we did. And I also like the idea of, probably the other reason we did it that way was because I started thinking about that, and then I thought, also, let's not show Dooms Vince's lair yet.
Yeah.
Like, because we don't know what we might want to do with it later.
The Doom Dungeon.
You know, this will. I will say this. This is not the last you'll see of Dooms Vince. Obviously, we end this on a cliffhanger. This will not be the end of Dooms Vince. And so, I didn't want Spawn Year to be the be-all, end-all for this character. I wanted to leave some room and some stuff open so that we could keep doing stuff with him. So, like we reveal his whole origin here. Let's not see everything yet.
People will tune in.
Even though this is a 2-year project.
And just to put some of your minds at ease, this is not the last we'll see of Captain Logan. We do end it on a cliffhanger. He'll be back.
It was fun that I finally got to be a floating head.
Yeah,
that was fun. I always wondered what it would be like being a floating head. I think my head is bigger than yours is in most things.
Yep.
Look how big my head is. There might be some subconscious symbolism going on there. I don't know.
Incidentally, I do have a huge noggin. Buying hats is a pain in the butt.
Vince's head is pretty big. It's bigger than my head.
Yep.
But Vince is just bigger than me in general. I think Vince is everything's bigger than my everything.
My foot is bigger than his head.
This is not in the same room as the old graveyard set because we needed to keep. Originally, the plan was we were going to strike the alleyway set and rebuild this set. In fact, some of it's still there. The black is actually still behind the brick wall stuff. And we ended up building this in a different room because I wasn't done with the regular episodes yet. And I'm glad we did that because I'm actually thinking about using that set for other stuff now. I'm not sure yet. We haven't decided yet if we're going to strike that and build something else there. Eventually, there are some other things we're going to want to build for some other projects. But right now, we're talking about leaving it there and redressing it and relighting it and using it for comic vaults.
Ah, that's a good idea.
And that might be cool. I like what you do here. I didn't have to direct Vince much. He always really understood what we were going for. And so I said, Vince, we need a shot of you, just really contemplating what you might do with the information you just had. And one take. A lot of the Dooms Vince stuff that's not real dialogue heavy is one or two takes.
I mean, we did shoot a couple takes for a lot of things, just to make sure he had options.
Well, sometimes it was first take, yeah.
Lunch to it. That's funny.
Shooting
that thing was so much fun.
This montage took forever to edit together.
Talk about Tim Lyons and the making of this song.
I came up with this song in the shower, kind of like you came up with Mustard. And there's Jason getting his head in the shot. You know what, by the way, we didn't talk about the board game. Can we do that real quick?
Yeah.
That game is horrible.
Thank God it's awful.
Anyway, moving on. But they're going to get to see some footage in the special features of you and I playing that game and hating it. Because we shot us the entire first time you played it. Well, the only time you played it.
Yep.
Something else I should say about the board game, too, is that the reason Dooms Vince gives up because he hates the game and loses is because that's what Vince did. Vince, when we played it, hated it so much that he started losing on purpose. And so that's what I wrote in the... I played it with you to try to get... I couldn't decide what I wanted Dooms Vince to do, so I decided I would try to derive inspiration from what you would actually do in the game. And that is actually what set up the Mountain Dew. I win that. That's what gives me the Mountain Dew. The Mountain Dew gets me to the second sugar coma. We would not have built the second set, probably, if it hadn't been for you hating that game and being really lazy playing it.
I really did. I was like, I don't actually care.
Isn't that amazing? Like those kinds of chain reactions are amazing. So Tim Lyons is an excellent guitarist, songwriter, singer, and he has a band called the Kansas City Bastards. He used to have a band called LIE. I have loved Tim Lyons' music for almost as long as I have been friends with Tim Lyons, and not that I disliked it before, I just didn't know about it yet. And Tim's let me use his music before. The theme for Rewind United is a Tim Lyons song, and he's just incredibly talented. He and I go to karaoke some and stuff like that. And anyway, I've always wanted to collaborate with him and get some original music from him in here. And I had this what I thought was kind of a funny idea of doing a really mainstream rock song for Spawn Year, called Making Spawn Year, and spell out the entire relationship of Captain Logan and Dooms Vince in the song and make it really, really sappy and cheesy. And that's what it is. So if you listen to that song and went, it's too sappy, that was on purpose. And he went to town on it. The guitar solo was fantastic.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what's cool about Tim, is that he just says, sure, I'll do whatever you want me to.
Yeah, he's great, and
he's totally okay with it.
because I mean,
Yeah, and like he doesn't procrastinate. He gets into stuff and he really does it. And I thought he put his everything into that song. Like,
You'll be able to make all 90 in one
He,
night?
I mean,
and it's very different from what he usually writes.
You're absolutely right.
I like the. I kind of. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I told him this. This is my favorite thing that I've heard him do, and.
I think Alcoholic Superman is a way better song, but
Oh, that's fair.
All right, come on,
But I mean, he really showed that he has some range doing this thing, and
yeah, because it doesn't sound like what he usually does. Well, and the thing is, it reminds me of his covers.
Yeah, it's true.
Just
His covers are
because he'll show his versatility and really branch out when he does covers. And he approached this kind of like a cover because he keeps telling me, "Well, don't give me too much credit. You wrote the song. Like, I wrote the lyrics and kind of came up with sort of the tune, but like." What he arranged is different from what I did. I mean, like, his tune is better than mine. It's based on what I sang him. Like, I don't write music. I didn't give him sheet music or anything. I had it in my head and I sang it. And what I had was a lot more drolly. It was a lot more emo rock. And what he did with it was a lot more like mainstream mid 2000s kind of pseudo hard rock, I guess. So, the most meta thing that happened in Spawn Year was the cast of Spawn Year at a party, watching themselves at a party, watching the fight that some of them were involved in making. It was ridiculous. That's that line I didn't like, and I put it in anyway. I don't know why it worked better for some reason.
It just seemed more
So good
Vincey
job.
to me.
Well, I'm with you, and I think what happened was, originally the line was, we're belaboring this point, but originally the line was, I like Captain Logan's speeches. The thing is, that was funny when I thought that I would seem speechier than I actually did, because my speeches are cut up so much with reaction shots to you that I don't think anybody would have got that line.
Which, I mean, I didn't get it. It hadn't occurred to me.
Yeah, but you didn't see the whole thing before you know what I mean? Like,
That's a good point.
we shot that before we made this. So I don't know that you were even aware of how many speeches I had. Oh no, I'm sorry. We shot because we shot the speech before this. Okay, whatever.
I mean, but that's the thing is that the
I'm talking
had a
the
lot of
basement
speeches
speech, yeah.
too, and I think that's what
Yeah.
I was thinking.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's just there's a lot of speechifying at the end because we had a lot to pay off. I was really worried that everybody was going to be really bored with this ending because there's a lot of exposition. There's a lot of people sitting around talking, and the audience we showed it to. And I mean, to be fair, take it with a grain of salt because these are people that know me.
Yeah.
But sometimes the people that know you are more critical, and I kind of thought some of these people or some of our friends would be like, I don't know what I'm watching. This is kind of dull, and they weren't. Everybody was really with it and engaged by it, and even the party stuff.
You can
Everybody was
tell
with.
when people are watching something you made. Like, isn't it cute? You made something.
That
And
wasn't this.
That wasn't the response. There were legitimate laughs going on, and in fact, I found myself laughing at things again because I'd either forgotten about it or, I mean, as Cap said, you're too close to it. You've seen it so many times that you're like, oh yeah, people think that kind of thing's funny. I just do my thing and whatever. That's so funny. Putting him on camera for the party.
And that was not superimposed. We actually had him Skype in, and he was with us this whole shoot.
It was.
That look. I put in a lot of really funny looks that you randomly gave the camera and probably did not think that you were actually acting at that point.
I was just being silly.
Or that you were doing something for a scene.
That's another face that I make all the time. My dad does that. You'll say, like, hey, Jim, that's my dad. Hey, Jim, how you doing? And he'll go, huh? He'll give you that look.
The party, some of this is scripted, a lot of it isn't. Especially when we get, like this speech I'm giving was written, but I went off book a lot. And you notice, I kind of stutter and stammer a little bit during it, which is kind of just me in general. I will occasionally kind of slip over my words and stuff, which, you know,
shouldn't drink so
I'm
much.
trying to do less of, but I'm not the world's greatest public speaker. Anyway, so in order to try to make it a little bit more realistic and not seem, because we're supposed to be in kind of sort of real life now, so I didn't want it to seem too scripted, so I took the scripted stuff and I kind of ran around it. And also I asked you guys to ad-lib during that, so I had to respond to ad-libs.
True. Hey, I noticed Jason's wearing the Tiny Adam West mask.
Yeah.
Costume even. How much did he like wearing that mask?
Well, he liked it a lot. He will randomly... He likes costume stuff in general. He's kind of at that age. But the reason he was wearing it during the shoot was because he had a really bad accident the week before and busted his lip up real bad.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a sizable bandage on his lip that you would be able to see during this, and I didn't want to shoot him with that. Just because, it would raise questions, and people would be distracted by, like, oh man, what happened to Jason, and I didn't...
Vince pounded him into silence.
Yeah, that's not funny. But anyway, so we weren't sure what to do about it because that had just happened a few days before, and no, it happened 2 days before, Vince. I mean, he had a bad. That was the weirdest week, man. He slammed into a door frame and busted up his lip real bad. We had to take him to the hospital. It was awful. So anyway, that's why he's wearing that mask. So yeah,
it's healed up pretty well now. Just in case anybody's.
Oh yeah, he's fine now.
You can't even see.
You can see a little bit of a scar, but it's going away. So Spawn your cake. I mean, I just I tried to pull out all the stops for this.
It was pretty good cake.
It was pretty good cake. The cake that Dan is eating is not actually beamed over.
Just in case anybody's curious.
Yeah, we didn't ship him that cake. That was another afterthought. That wasn't in the script. That was something I thought of a couple days before we shot this. When Dan and I were talking a few days before that, and I said, Dan, I'd love for you to actually be in this party Skyped in. And he was like, that sounds funny, so we'll do it. And then I said, hey, could you go get a cake with, like, chocolate cake with white icing? And he went and got some. Our plates don't match. You'll notice that somehow or rather that plate is a different plate within the matter stream. See, look, watch. Now it has molecular... It's molecularly a different thing now. Anyway.
What I kind of like about that, about using the teleporter right there, is that it gives a second use for the teleporter other than just getting the device into a couple of places. So it's like it's an additional payoff. It becomes useful beyond its original use.
I think it also helps to keep reminding you that you're in this kind of pseudo sci-fi version of reality. So when we keep using the sci-fi stuff, it's like oh yeah, we're still watching fictional versions of the real people, but they're acting like they're the real people, and I don't know. It's the whole thing's very involved. Anyway, so this was entirely improv. This was one take on both sides. We did not time Vince on the other side. I honestly don't know how you managed this.
I don't know either, but I mean, what was going through my head was, don't look too much or for too long at the other person.
Yeah.
It kind of looked like a bug. At that point, I was running out of steam. I was like, I don't know what to say.
There's a little more of it, but we cut it off there. And obviously, that wasn't scripted. This stuff isn't scripted.
I like the acknowledgement that that there were mistakes made. And that, it's kind of, without saying that I wanted this to be fabricated, it's saying that these are things that we couldn't avoid. And it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff was certainly not on purpose. It wasn't like I was deliberately trying to throw a lot of stuff in there to make it look fake or not like it would have been in the air quote real Spawn year. There were things that allowed to happen because of that, but I tried to make it look as good as I could on the on the budget we had and what we were able to do. But part of that also, in acknowledging that kind of thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I really like that we got a shot right here, this picture on this wall of Cap and Sarah.
Yeah, that wasn't on purpose. I'm glad that happened.
Because that's where that picture hangs.
Yeah.
God, spinning that thing was most fun. I was like, how can I spin this thing in camera, in scene? I had to go out and buy a notebook special, despite the fact that I had like 30 notebooks at home, because I just kind of impulsively buy fun-looking notebooks.
I happen to do the same thing. There's a Batman one right here. Look, that one's new.
People are like, I can't see it. It's because you're
that
not
is
with
Sarah's
us right
handwriting. Doomsvince writes in Sarah's handwriting.
Yeah, well, she was
which is
Doom
funny
Sarah
because
for a
she was
little
also Doom Sarah for a while. And what was working with Sarah like?
It was fun. I mean, that's the thing is that getting to know Sarah, as I have over the years, has made the process of shooting with her easier. But getting to know Sarah was kind of interesting to cross a line from being your friend's wife to being friendly with your friend's wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in an inappropriate way. It's just it's fun. Wait, Pierce is his last name.
Yes.
I did not know that.
That's funny. Yeah, everybody calls him Pierce.
That's funny. But Sarah and I would get into these modes where she and I would stay in character together and do some goofy stuff, which ended up making it into the show sometimes.
You don't have to sit through all 40 hours of it.
Vince has a lot of good outtakes. And I haven't put together the making of feature yet, but there's going to be a lot of outtakes in it because there's a bunch of stuff, all the way through. I've kept nearly every frame of footage we've shot. I've kept.
Yeah, I think this right here is a good example of how Sarah and I work together. I mean, granted, I realize she's behind me and I'm responding to you, but she and I got really comfortable.
It's important to note, too, that in the party scene, and this was not intentional, but I'm glad that it worked out this way, Vince and Sarah are sitting in exactly the same places that the fake them were sitting when they're married. In that room.
Did you say that was intentional?
No, it wasn't intentional, but I'm glad it worked out that way.
I was just taking my seat.
I don't think we...
mine.
Yeah, because see, look, they're in the same places there.
I like that Vince has a giant fish.
Yeah, which disappears in a couple of close-ups because we forgot to put it back in. We had to shoot some of that. We had to shoot on a different day, and I forgot to put the fish back in, so it disappears in a couple places. I'm probably ruining this whole show for people. People are like, oh man,
If you don't take care of this,
you guys had no attention to detail. All these continuity
Like
errors.
40 plus hours shot in whatever time you had.
Unfortunate, unexpected.
Misfortune.
Approximation to my wife. If she was
There's gonna be a lot of outtakes from this in the making of feature.
Captain Logan.
Poke him with the stick.
So all that's left here is the stinger, and we wow. I mean, like an hour and 46 minutes, and there's still a bunch of stuff we could have talked about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much other stuff. I mean, like the jacket, hoo-ha, whatnot. Those two are specific.
Yeah, man, and like some stuff with like the board game shoot, and the video game shoots, and all the backyard stuff. And
talk about the teddy bear real quick.
So Pierce makes this Billy Kincaid teddy bear, and just gives it to me as a present. And I was like, well, I got to put that in there somewhere. And I just figured out a way to work it in. And he did that with a lot of different props.
So creepy.
Well, folks, this is going to be it for us. There'll be lots more features and things, assuming that this comes out before the special features do. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Really hope you enjoyed Spawn Year. And I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince, reminding you to support your local Spawn Year.